21 minutes. That's all prosecutors say it took for a 13-year-old girl to walk into a famous singer's home and never come back alive. They believe David murdered Celeste Davis to protect a secret that could have destroyed everything he'd built. But the defense is telling a completely different story, one so controversial that it has left the courtroom divided. So, who's telling the truth? A judge has officially ruled that David will stand trial for Celeste Davis's murder, marking the beginning of what could become one of the most closely watched criminal cases in recent memory. Prosecutors say the evidence points to a calculated killing, driven by fear of exposure. The defense, however, argues there's another side to this story. Their claims have shocked the victim's family, raised difficult questions, and introduced enough uncertainty to challenge everything the jury thinks it knows. The judge has now made one thing clear. David will stand trial for the murder of 13-year-old Celeste Davis. That decision came after prosecutors laid out what they believe happened inside David's home. According to their timeline, Celeste walked through the front door, and just 21 minutes later, she was dead. The prosecution believes those 21 minutes tell the entire story. Their argument is that David wasn't caught off guard. They say he was waiting for Celeste, knowing she had become a serious threat to his future. Why? Because prosecutors believe she was about to expose their alleged sexual relationship. Celeste was only 13 years old. If those allegations became public, prosecutors argue David's career would have been destroyed. That, they say, is what gave him a motive to kill. At least, that's the prosecution's version of events. But as the preliminary hearing came to an end, the defense began revealing where they intend to challenge that theory. And they didn't focus on just one argument. They appeared to introduce several possibilities, each designed to raise the same question. Can the prosecution prove exactly what happened beyond a reasonable doubt? One of those arguments goes back to text messages discussed in court. According to the defense, those messages suggest Celeste was upset after seeing another woman connected to David. They pointed to conversations where she allegedly threatened to ruin his career, tell her father about the relationship, and even made statements about harming him. So why bring those messages into court? The defense appears to be suggesting that whatever happened inside the house may not have unfolded the way prosecutors describe it. Could there have been an argument? Could that argument have turned physical? Could David eventually claim he acted in self-defense? At this stage, those questions don't have answers, and that's important. The defense doesn't have to prove that self-defense actually happened today. Their job is to show that there could be another explanation besides murder. Then they introduced another theory, one that immediately drew attention inside the courtroom. The defense referenced evidence suggesting Celeste had previously threatened to take her own life. That raises another possibility they may explore during trial. Could they argue that after arriving at David's home, something happened that led Celeste to harm herself? Again, they haven't proven that claim, but legally, they don't have to. The burden on the defense is very different from the burden on prosecutors. Prosecutors must convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense only needs to create enough uncertainty that jurors begin asking whether another explanation is possible. That's why these arguments matter, not because they've been accepted as fact, but because they introduce doubt. Those suggestions, however, did not sit well with Celeste's family. After the preliminary hearing, family attorney Patrick Steinfeld criticized the defense's approach. He argued that some of the claims raised in court had no evidentiary basis during the hearing, including suggestions that Celeste may have taken her own life or that she had been violent. From the family's perspective, those claims were deeply disturbing. They believed the defense was attempting to damage Celeste's reputation instead of addressing the prosecution's evidence. But that's where criminal trials often become complicated. A defense attorney isn't required to prove their client is innocent. Their responsibility is to challenge the prosecution's case, question the evidence, and present alternative explanations whenever possible. Whether those arguments ultimately persuade a jury is another question entirely. For now, what is clear is that both sides are preparing to tell two very different stories about the same 21 minutes. When this trial begins, the jury will have to decide which version is supported by the evidence. As the preliminary hearing came to a close, another issue drew just as much attention as the legal arguments themselves. It involved what happened inside the courtroom. During the hearing, Prosecutors became concerned after a witness who had reportedly testified before the grand jury appeared in the public gallery. At around the same time, that witness was seen speaking with Patrick Steinfeld, the attorney representing Celeste's family. That immediately raised concerns. Prosecutors questioned whether there had been any improper communication with a witness connected to the case. The situation escalated quickly. According to those present, the prosecutor confronted the issue, warned that the family attorney's courtroom access could be affected, and as the witness was eventually asked to leave the courtroom. It sounded dramatic, but after the incident was clarified, both sides explained that the conversation had been entirely accidental. The witness didn't know Patrick Steinfeld was representing the family, and Steinfeld didn't know the individual had been called as a witness. In the end, there was no indication that the conversation influenced the case. Still, it became another unexpected moment in an already tense hearing. Then the defense returned to one of its more controversial arguments. They pointed to documents showing that Celeste's family had signed paperwork allowing her to travel to London with David. Why does that matter? The defense appears to believe it supports their argument that the family was aware of the relationship between David and Celeste. But prosecutors and many legal observers see a major problem with that reasoning. Allowing a child to travel with someone is not the same as consenting to an illegal sexual relationship. Those are two completely different issues. Even if the family trusted David enough to approve the trip, that alone would not make any alleged criminal conduct lawful. Still, the defense may not be trying to prove legality. Instead, they could be trying to challenge the prosecution's suggested motive. Prosecutors argue David killed Celeste because he feared their relationship would become public and destroy his career. But if David genuinely believed the family already knew about the relationship, or at least wouldn't report him, the defense could argue that his alleged motive becomes much weaker. Whether a jury accepts that argument is another matter. There's also another point the defense emphasized. According to the evidence discussed during the hearing, Celeste repeatedly asked to visit David's house that week. Prosecutors say that fact doesn't change what happened after she arrived. The defense, however, believes it's another detail the jury should consider when evaluating the timeline. Outside the courtroom, public reaction has remained divided. Some believe the prosecution has already presented a compelling case. Others argue the defense has done exactly what it is supposed to do, raise questions that cannot simply be ignored. One viewer following the case summed up what many people are thinking. She said she couldn't believe Celeste would willingly go to David's home intending to take her own life. To her, that theory simply didn't make sense. But from a legal perspective, belief isn't the standard. The real question is whether the defense can introduce enough uncertainty that at least one juror hesitates before reaching a verdict. And that's exactly what this trial will test. For now, one decision has already been made. David will stand trial for the murder of Celeste Davis. The prosecution believes it has established a clear motive, a clear timeline, and a clear suspect. The defense insists there is another side to the story. Now, those competing versions will be presented before a jury, where every piece of evidence, every witness, and every argument will face its toughest examination yet. Whether the prosecution proves its case beyond a reasonable doubt, or the defense succeeds in creating just enough doubt to change the outcome, is a question that won't be answered until the trial begins. If you've been following this case, let us know what you think. Do you believe the prosecution has presented enough evidence to secure a conviction? Or do you think the defense has raised reasonable doubt? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And for more updates on this case and other major courtroom stories, stay with us.